The Heavenly Demon. Can't Live a Normal Life. By Sanchin. Chapter 222. The Land of Awakened Blind. Part 1. The crowd was growing in numbers. At first, the people who had been scared at the sight of Jacqueline being dragged away changed when they gathered as a group and showed ferocious force, as if they would even attack Roman Dmitri. People continued to pour into the square endlessly, and they paused a few steps away from Roman Dmitri and his men. It was tense. A man from the crowd stepped forward and spoke on behalf of everyone. Jacqueline is the hero of Redford. What on earth did he do to persecute him? Everyone here should know. This man robbed the carriage of Count London and stole his gold. Roman Dmitri spoke calmly. His face didn't seem to care about the crowd at all. Count London is a traitor who sold the nation. We saw and heard it, and we know he intends to play with the Dmitri family and side with you. The gold coins in the carriage were the property of Redford. He must have intended to steal it and run away to Dmitri. Jacqueline has only used the money of the traitor for the right thing, and you, a foreigner, cannot punish him. Right. Free Jacqueline right now. The people were angry. Their fear was gone, and their eyes glistened with murderous intent. From one loot, they saw blood. They had come to think that the nobles were nothing and believed that thousands of them could take down Roman and his men. That was what common sense would tell people. However, they didn't know that a single human could kill all of them. They were ignorant and foolish. Even if they opened their eyes and ears, they didn't seem to hear or see anything. Roman Dmitri said, "Where's the truth to what you claim?" "What truth?" "It is our experience. Count London is trash, and everyone knows that. After you visited, he stole some gold from somewhere and was running away. It wasn't even a little gold. It was 100,000. If that huge amount of money is not used for running away, then what is it for? So you base that on just pure speculation? Do not change my words. It is a fact. Betrayer, gold, Roman Dmitri, these three words led people to conclude that Count London was about to commit treason. Roman chuckled. Their statement about not changing their words meant that there wasn't any truth to them. Innocent people died because of you. The soldiers and knights who followed Count London did nothing wrong, and yet you killed them for a statement that cannot be proved. It is different from normal theft. People died, yet you continue to speak the same words like a parrot. There is no evidence, but you claim to be right. There is no evidence, but Count London is a traitor. He took something out of his sleeves. Then he undid the cloth and threw the papers at Jacqueline. Tuck. Read it. His unexpected behavior made everyone present confused. What could the documents inside be? Jacqueline looked at Roman Dmitri. Whoosh. He picked up the papers, and the moment he began to read them, his face was shocked. What is this? He was confounded. His eyes went wide as he looked back and forth between Roman and the papers. His eyes trembled at the documents. He couldn't accept this reality. However, the official seal stamped there proved that the documents were real. Read it. The voice called out, and Jacqueline gulped. His face was pale, as he was unable to handle the reality in front of him. The Golden Bank certifies through these documents that Roman Dmitri of the Dmitri family has repaid the 110,000 gold borrowed by the Redford Kingdom from the Golden Bank. Tuck. He dropped the papers and looked in disbelief at Roman Dmitri, who calmly said, "You clearly said it was supposed to be 100,000 for him to run away, right? But the truth is there in the documents, and it was money to pay off the debts of this kingdom. A few days ago, he received an ultimatum from the Golden Bank about the money, and he borrowed that money from me. If the carriage had arrived safely, we wouldn't have needed to pay an additional 10,000 gold as interest. It is the truth that you have chosen to ignore until now." Bullshit. Jacqueline groaned and screamed. This made no sense. There was no reason for Roman Dmitri to lend such a huge amount, and why was Count London even trying to pay off the debt of the nation? Count London was not a patriot. He was the type to only care about himself, and the rumors going around proved what he was like. Then this had to be fabricated. However, the contents of the document couldn't be explained. Jacqueline yelled. "Do you think I don't know that it is a forged document? Count London is someone who turns a blind eye to people in trouble. When everyone was starving and complaining of hunger, people were even thrown out of their jobs due to a dispute with the upper-class people. Even after making so much money, he did nothing for the people. He didn't give a little bit, and he invited you to a grand party and enjoyed things we couldn't. The party that day was what ticked them off. The luxury that Count London was enjoying could no longer be tolerated." "Right," so Roman asked. "The authenticity has been confirmed by the Golden Bank. Rather, I have something to ask you. Just like how your claim that he was trying to siphon the money elsewhere has been proven to be false, where is the evidence about Count London being the traitor that you spoke of?" At that, Jacqueline's eyes trembled. "Count London? Where did his reputation come from? It wasn't that he intentionally did it. In a situation where rumors spread around the world, he just didn't deny them. It started with the work of Baron Dread, his competitor. Baron Dread had a fight with Count London over the rights of the commercials in the capital, but when he was defeated in the financial battle, he came up with a plan. His reputation had to be changed. The Count's father was known to be a patriot, but his son, who succeeded him, didn't show any signs similar to his. So rumors spread about him being trash. At the same time, Baron Dread released money to the public to look good. It was a nice plan. Baron Dread went out in the mornings to give out food to the people, and then he won the hearts of the people by showing a false smile, and with that, the rumors spread that Baron Dread was the one for the Redford Kingdom. If only it had stopped there, Count London might not have gone after Baron Dread, but the man had done so many evil things that it was horrible, human trafficking and drugs. He got involved on the wrong side and was selling people to the Empire to get a nice relationship with the Kronos Empire. Actually, Baron Dread's reputation wouldn't have lasted that long. With time, the truth would have come out, but before that, Count London broke him down, and that made him the villain. Common people thought that Baron Dread was a good person, and Count London, who had taken down a good man, got criticized. The rumor that he was a traitor began from there. In fact, he didn't even try to sell the nation or harm it, yet the people would never stop criticizing the poor man. 1 year, then 2 years. As the years passed, people began to become more sure of it. Even if he acted like a normal merchant, people would still call him greedy. Roman said, "Has Count London ever done anything that deserves for him to be called evil? A quarrel with Baron Dread cannot be called an evil act. Just like how you compete with others at work, it is a common thing, and Count London was the one who settled the debts that Baron Dread left. Why did you think he did it? Did he care about how you, people, see him? No. He didn't care about what he was called since the people were already pointing at him, but considering the circumstances of the people who were tormented by Baron Dread, he made a decision to do it. The truth was right in front of his eyes. The people were blinded. Some might say he cheated, or some might say he didn't explain anything. However, was that even valid? Before making hasty judgments, there had to be some truth to them. A little digging into Baron Dread would have shown how bad he was, and Count London followed the right path. How the hell could he be evil, then? People labeled everything he did as mean. Count London's reputation had already been built. If anyone presents clear evidence of how he is a traitor, I will release Jacqueline here. Why did you call him trash? Because he is rich? Because he threw a party? He was using what was his. Even if he only cares about his own interests, you, people, have no right to criticize him for doing what he wants with his own money, saying he didn't give himself up for you. Prejudice limits people's thoughts. Yu Hyun and Count London, just as they thought the other person needed help because they were poor and thought that they would just happily receive the help, the people of Redford believed that the riches of Count London were their right and that any additional money must mean he did something wrong. Both cases were illusions. The world that the two lived in was different from another. In the same situation, if one chooses a good deed, the other chooses a bad deed. I will ask again. Is Count London really the traitor you are talking about? At those words, everyone was confused. Roman was right. Could Count London be the traitor? He was called wicked because of Baron Dread, who showed kindness to the people, and no matter what the man did, people hated him. Actually, that was why Jacqueline rioted. Count London had a lot of money, and the man was only using it on himself, and all the citizens now looked shocked. The attack on the carriage and the murder of innocent people. Even in the face of death, the reason they moved forward was that London was a bad man, but now everything had changed. And now they had turned into murderers. They had become beings who blindly followed the rumors and didn't care about the truth. However, the truth before their eyes changed everything. Roman Dmitri was someone who settled Redford's debts. Count London was trying to help the nation and not run away, yet he was punished. Their faith in their actions was shattered. However, no one could accept that. The moment they put down their weapons, they didn't have the confidence to take responsibility for the mistakes they had made. It was then. There is this place called Annabelle Orphanage in Redford. Everyone probably knows it. Annabelle, who manages a place for homeless kids and helps those in need, is called the hero of Redford, like Jacqueline. But did you think about where the wealth of the orphanage comes from? Annabelle is a commoner. Isn't it strange for her to have had the resources to help people for so many years? The actions of the evil man were questioned again. People considered the orphanage a sanctuary. At that moment, they were dumbfounded. Why bring up that topic now? When the ominous thoughts began to creep into them slowly, Roman said. The sponsor of the Annabelle Orphanage. It is Count London, whom you accuse of being trash. The hidden truth, it was a story different from what they saw or heard. Chapter 223. The Land of Awakened Blind. Part 2. The recent remarks were completely different from what they knew. Contrary to the rumors, Count London was not a traitor, and Roman Dmitri might really have settled the debts of their kingdom. That alone was shocking. At a time when accepting that innocent soldiers were killed at their hands made them breathless, hearing about the Annabelle Orphanage was too much. Annabelle, who was she? At first, she just provided food for the children who lost their homes, but at some point, people asked if she was running an orphanage as the number of kids she was looking after had increased. Thus, the orphanage came into existence naturally. Annabelle didn't only hesitate to look after the kids, but she would also help starving people. The Saint of Redford, people adored her. Even when the king of the nation abandoned the security of the nation, she didn't. So they couldn't believe it. The people looked so lost as they mumbled. Count London is the benefactor of the Annabelle Orphanage? No way. There is no way someone like that traitor would help out that place. Actually, the way the orphanage came into existence made no sense. At first, she was just giving food away, but as time went by, the good deeds she was doing began to go beyond what normal people could afford. The people also had their doubts, yet even though they knew it didn't make any sense, they didn't bother digging for the truth. Whatever the reason, it didn't change the fact that she helped people. No matter how chaotic the world was, they wanted to believe blindly that a kind person existed in Redford. However, if the traitor was supporting it, they couldn't handle the truth that was revealed. While people would talk about how great Annabelle was, they would also talk about how Count London was ruining the nation. And so the riots occurred. It was Jacqueline who spoke up first, but then everyone agreed to take up arms because the opponent was Count London. Everyone was silent, as they were all too shocked. Then a person in a robe stepped forward. The person in a robe walked forward, and the people groaned. The face revealed from under the robe was that of the Saint of Redford. Miss Annabelle. Are Roman Dimitri's words true? Please say that they aren't. Prove to everyone that Count London, who is accused of being a traitor to this nation, has never helped the orphanage. A person asked. They were desperate not to fall into guilt, but Annabelle shook her head with a sad expression. Everything Mr. Roman Dmitri said is true. So put down the weapons you are holding." The citizens hesitated. Even after the truth was revealed, they couldn't put down their weapons to protect their lives. "I am not half the great person you think of me as." I couldn't look away from the starving kids, so I shared a little food with them, but then one day, Count London came to visit me. He said that he noticed my good deeds and that if I was willing to take care of people, he would fund the expenses each month. It is the truth about the orphanage that you people don't know. There was no doubt that she was a good person. Good deeds must be backed up with a nice personality, but reality isn't something that hits you just because of the personality you have. Running an orphanage is not easy. If I didn't have money to buy food for the kids, it wouldn't work. And if I couldn't solve the problems of people who needed my help, it wouldn't work. I wouldn't have been able to devote myself to the duty in the way you remember me. Because I, like all of you, was someone who couldn't live in reality. In fact, I wanted to tell the truth about the accusations against Count London. The man sent food and money to the orphanage to help people and didn't stop even when people called him a traitor. The more she spoke, the more tears welled up. Looking at the bewildered people, she recalled her interactions with Count London. "The title of Saint of Redford is too much for me. If it weren't for that man, I wouldn't even be here." When I asked him why he wasn't telling the truth, he would always say that someone doing the task is more important than who is doing it. Had I known that you people would attack him, I would have spoken the truth even if he stopped me. Because he wasn't someone who deserved to be treated like that. The people may not have known the truth, but he deserves all the things in life. That is what it should be. She didn't blame the people since they didn't know the truth. But still, she couldn't hide the anger in her voice. She was an ordinary woman. People turned her into someone great, but she would never be in that position if not for Count London. After the riot was over, the children ran to the orphanage with bright faces. Each kid showed a gold coin in their hand and asked Annabelle, who was taking care of them, to accept it with a smile. Such warm hearts. If she had known that the source of the coins was Count London's blood, Annabelle wouldn't have smiled at them. And when she heard the truth, the world collapsed. When people said they were going to attack, she went to see Count London. And Roman Dmitri, whom she met there, told her what she should do for Count London's sake. Annabelle said, "We all made a huge mistake. Everyone who didn't see the truth, and I, who didn't tell the truth despite knowing it. Do not do anything you will regret. Count London, whom you called a traitor, is a man who cared for the kingdom a lot more than anyone else, and if Roman Dmitri came to help at Count London's request, it is your last chance. Stop, put down your weapons." And she ended with that. The people went silent as if they were hypnotized. And it was Roman Dmitri who broke the silence. The day you people came to the mansion to attack Count London, I asked him this. Why don't you tell the truth? The poverty of this kingdom isn't the responsibility of the London family, and you are being called a traitor, so why bother helping the people of the kingdom? On that day, he said that in the era of hatred and in this harsh reality, in order for the kingdom not to collapse, it was necessary to have someone who could accept the people's criticism. He knew the truth coming out would lessen the accusations against him, but he didn't do it. In the era of hatred, if someone deserves to be criticized, it is not a noble but the king. He knew that the riot today would turn the nation upside down. He looked at Jacqueline. From the moment Annabelle appeared, Jacqueline couldn't come to his senses. Jacqueline, was this riot purely your intention? Even though it was a secret that even insiders didn't know that the gold coins were loaded in the carriage to solve the problem with the golden bank, you were waiting for the carriage and knew exactly where it was moving. That information, who told you about it? And is the person who told you the information still here? What? Jacqueline's eyes went wide. Come to think of it, a strange thing did happen. He was just complaining like any other day, but the owner of the bar was the one who raised the remarks and incited them. It was the same when they visited Count London's mansion. His words against Roman Dmitri made him fear that a fight would happen. And now, the owner of the bar was nowhere to be found. He, who told him of the route of the carriage, disappeared like an illusion from the moment the gold coins had been robbed. The one who told you about it might have already disappeared. You people had the chance to look at the truth. The fact that the source of the information felt strange, and the fact that normal people had taken down Aura swordsmen and escort soldiers. If you had thought even for a second, you would have realized how strange it was. The meaning of the series of events is clear. There were people aiming for Redford's chaos, and you had taken their side. Even though Count London is a person who cared about the nation more than anyone else, from your decision, innocent soldiers were killed, and Count London bled. The truth was harsh: 100,000 gold, Annabelle, and the fact that they were played, and people couldn't come to their senses. It turned out that the thing they were happy about, the robbery they were happy about, had plunged the nation into the abyss. Roman Dmitri said, "I will ask you one last time. Is Jacqueline someone who can be called the hero of Redford? Was that what it felt like to stop an accident?" The people were silent. Until a few minutes ago, they were angry. It was right to attack Count London, and they gathered a force to defeat Roman Dmitri, who tried to touch the hero of Redford. People flocked to the square. The people who had a hard time every day due to starvation now had glistening eyes with the murderous intent of having their gold taken away. But the truth was different. Roman Dmitri and Count London. The fact that they were doing things differently from what they had been thinking made the people weak. Clang! Clack! The weapons dropped, and so did their anger. They could no longer raise their weapons and face Roman Dmitri. Their faces were red, and they realized how foolishly they had acted. And at the center was Jacqueline. He, who had led them into this, felt like he was losing track of reality. "I got played. What the hell did I do?" Roman Dmitri's words made his heart clench. He had the chance to see the truth. People accused Count London of being a traitor, but whenever something happened, he always brought in some people to help. Yet the first reaction he received was hostility. He thought he was exploiting the labor force, but in terms of his attitude and treatment towards the workers, they were given undeserved care. At that time, when Jacqueline had asked what life was like there, a servant of the Count said, "To be honest, I am quite happy with my life with the London family. I know I will be beaten for saying this, but the Count isn't as bad as people think. He cares for the people and treats his servants with more respect than anyone else. So don't hate him. No matter how the world sees him, we know he is a kind person." They were absurd words. Everyone accused him of being a traitor, but the servants of the London family said something else. Maybe it was the price of comfort. Since they weren't starving there, the servants might have liked being there. He had seen the truth, listened to the truth, and experienced the truth. There were beings who knew the truth without telling it, but unlike them, Jacqueline turned a blind eye. The day he attended the party, even with food to feed his wife, he went to the pub and complained. Maybe it was an inferiority complex because they were enjoying things that he couldn't. At that moment. Suddenly, he looked at his hands. The red traces, which he thought were right, began to scare him. As Roman Dmitri had said, he made an irreparable mistake. Chapter 224. The Land of Awakened Blind. Part 3. Jacqueline covered his face. He was sobbing with his body trembling, and he couldn't stop crying at the emotions that had taken over him. "I am sorry. I am really sorry. I never thought that Count London was someone who worked so hard for us. No, I never thought of it. Everyone called him a traitor, and so I thought the same." Born into a commoner family, Jacqueline lived a life not different from others. Rather than planning for the future, their immediate life was a priority, and as they lived like that, making a family and taking the burden of the kids turned into all of their life. It was a reality that wasn't nice. Knowing that the reality wouldn't change despite thinking about it, he only felt more dissatisfied with his life. So he became narrow-minded, and his vision began to turn less. The success stories of other people turned into something far from reality. "Yuck, what am I supposed to do now? Please tell me, I am not sure what to do. Even after doing such a thing, it is difficult for me to accept this situation." He was a commoner. He became the hero of Redford by chance, but he wasn't able to lead the people because he was special. It was because the people sympathized with Jacqueline because they were the same. The target that was used was Jacqueline, but honestly, anyone could have taken on that role. His face was stained with tears. After checking the reality with Roman Dmitri, Jacqueline's face distorted as the world he knew collapsed. As an ordinary person who lived a repeated life, he didn't have the experience to accept the series of events. He felt lost. He sobbed and cried, not caring how the people looked at him. Silence began to descend, and the people couldn't say anything. They neither blamed Jacqueline nor comforted him because they were no different from him. They projected themselves onto Jacqueline and eventually left the judgment of the situation to Roman Dmitri, who said, "Jacqueline, you have your own story. The riot that attacked the mansion wasn't for personal gain, and you, who robbed the gold coins, distributed them to the people, proving what you took up arms for." But swing. The sword was lifted. Despite how shocked people were, he pointed his sword at Jacqueline's throat. "There is no reason that can be an excuse for your actions. You incited and attacked the carriage of Count London, killing innocent soldiers. They also had families. Even if you raised a riot for your family because of your misunderstanding, the soldiers' families lost their sons and fathers. What do you think you will pay them back with? Even if you cry, those who died cannot come back." He looked at the people. This wasn't about Jacqueline. The opponent might be Jacqueline, but Roman Dmitri was saying that to all who participated in the riot. The water has been spilled. In order for Redford to avoid repeating the same thing, the responsibility for the actions that you took cannot be simply considered a mistake and pardoned. You are not the hero of Redford. Jacqueline, you are a murderer who committed murder by mistake and will be held accountable. Jacqueline closed his eyes tightly. He was ready to accept his death. His body was trembling, and it proved he was human, but the blood of the Count on his hands was true. Because of his one mistake, a person who had devoted his life to helping the kingdom almost died. If he had hit the Count a little harder, the man would have never gotten up. He was the enemy here. He did what his real enemy wouldn't do. Citizens of Redford, listen up. Remember what happened today. Jacqueline is not a hero of Redford but will remain as one who accepted his death for his sins. Later, when you make the same mistake, think of him. There is no one to take your place for your wrong actions. At that moment, flash. The sword was swung. A man who was too normal to be called a hero, just like that, Jacqueline fell with blood flowing. At that time, Count London led the troops to the royal palace. He didn't want the bloodshed to throw the nation into chaos, but there was no other way. The people's anger had reached its peak. Right now, it is just about attacking me, a noble, but if the core of the problem isn't solved, it will be hard to predict what chaos will happen in the future. After all, the future of the Redford kingdom will be at stake. Someone must take up arms and bring the king down. Even while walking, his mind felt so messed up. Currently, he had agreed to overthrow the king, but Roman Dmitri wanted him to usurp the throne, and that was a different matter. The king had a prince who was concerned for the kingdom. When he thought of the prince, who spoke about rebelling for the nation, he wondered if following Roman's words was right. Under the same sky, the blood of the royal family would not be different. If they wanted to destroy the king and claim the throne, they had to take the life of the prince. For what am I rebelling for? A single purpose. If one soberly judged reality, the prince didn't fit the role. In a turbulent world, someone was needed to sort out the chaotic situation, but the years have proven that the prince wasn't that great. He also asked the count to start the rebellion. It was like admitting that he didn't have the strength to do it despite knowing that the king was in the wrong. So from the choices that were given, he knew what he had to do. The moment he stormed into the palace with weapons, from then on, his hesitation would ruin everything. I am sorry, Prince. The choice should belong to a leader. For those who followed him, Count London would not be shaken. Knight Commander. Yes. The moment we enter the palace, we will ask to have a talk. If the royal knights, who follow the king, act hostile towards us, then without hesitation, bring down the head of the royal knights commander and subdue their troops at once. Keep that in mind. In the end, this is a fight that will decide Redford's fate. If we cannot achieve results in the process, Redford will fall into destruction. I understand. The knight commander looked confused. The Knights of London and the Royal Knights were close friends, but he didn't show any hesitation at the order of the Count. It was something he had hoped for. Looking at the Count and his devotion to the people who knew him wondered if things would be different if this man were the King of Redford. Finally, they reached the royal palace. However, the guard opened the door like he was waiting for them. Please go inside. Beyond their gaze were the royal knights, and when they saw Count London, they all knelt down. The royal knights of Redford protect the royal family. We know that it is treason to oppose the king, but we made the decision to set things right for the nation. We will close our eyes and ears this time. So get what you want. Do what you need to for the nation, for Redford. Count London's decision, those from the London family weren't the only ones who wanted it. The people in the royal palace, they heard about the stories. People called Count London a traitor, but the contents of the information that reached the palace were different. The hope of Redford. In the face of a financial downturn, Count London devoted himself to the nation to the point where the vast fortune he earned was exhausted. It was a move that couldn't be compared to that of a king. Unlike the king, who was gambling these days and enjoying himself with women, Count London took the job of the king. And so, the door opened. Despite knowing the meaning of the royal sword's existence and knowing that a single disregard would reduce its value, the royal knight commander turned a blind eye. Even though he couldn't join the rebellion, he decided this was the right move for the kingdom to prevent as much bloodshed as possible and make Count London take the throne. And thanks to this, Count London was able to cross the path safely. He walked down the long corridor, which he always used whenever he reported to the king, and the armed troops followed him. Today, how would it be remembered? Some would call him a traitor who caused a rebellion, but history's record didn't matter. A man called a traitor. For Count London, the priority had always been Redford. No matter what he was called, he did what he thought was right. Creak. The door opened. When the knights of the family opened the way, Count London stepped into the king's space with a hard expression. At that moment, Count London's face was stained with shock. He looked at the throne that he had always looked up to. The King of Redford, with his head dropped, had a pale face. A pale face and blood dripping from his mouth. The king was dead. It was an unacceptable piece of information, and Count London found a suicide note left by the king. Count London, after hearing that you were attacked, I couldn't hold back the anger towards myself because the chaos was caused by me. And despite knowing that you were loyal to our nation, anger rose over the days I ignored it. It was strange. The content of the will was different from what people thought of the king. Actually, I wanted to live valiantly. People say the death of my children was an accident, but behind it was a group of evil people who threatened the safety of Redford. It wasn't enough that they killed my eldest son. They even killed my daughter, and one day they sent me a letter. Their threat was that from that point on, if I didn't gamble each day and live a spoiled life, my remaining son would be killed. Actually, my second child had been poisoned before. You might not know this. Because I continued to feed him the antidote they had given each time, and each time I acted for the nation, one of my family members would die. The hidden truth. There was information in the will that even Count London hadn't known about. I am an incompetent king. I didn't fulfill my duty as a king or as the father of my children. I just acted selfishly. But now I know that it shouldn't have been like that. If I became greedier in order to protect my children, many people in Redford would lose their lives. Count London, you are the leader that Redford needs. If I step down from the throne, the nation will gain stability under your leadership. Don't get my blood on your hands. I will take my own life so that the evil people will no longer threaten me. So, I ask for this nation that I had destroyed to be saved. What the hell is this? His hand holding the note trembled. Count London gritted his teeth and read the last words. Lastly, I hope you don't force the life out of the prince. After all, he is a child with not much left around him. That was it. Count London held the will. It was the same. Just as Jacqueline didn't know the truth about him, he didn't know the truth about the king. It felt so irresponsible. Even if he died like this, the wrongdoings committed by the king wouldn't disappear. However, as Count London, there was something he had to do. Find the prince right now. You must let him know about this. In his remaining life, even if that time was short, Count London wanted the prince to know the truth about the king who was accused by the people. Even if he was incompetent, the king had been a father to him. Chapter 225. The Land of Awakened Blind. Part 4. It didn't take too long to find the prince. As usual, the prince was in his place, and Count London told him the truth of what he had witnessed with a complicated look on his face. A little while ago, His Majesty, the King, passed away. Redford's last heir, Charlotte Redford, said with a calm face, "Okay. You knew about it?" My father came to me and told me the truth of why he lived like that. He said that the royal family must fulfill its responsibility before Redford falls into the abyss. He said it in a roundabout way, but in the end, it meant that this nation could survive if I and my brother died. He drank tea. Smelling the sweet scent, Charlotte Redford looked at the shocked Count London. "You don't need to look so taken aback, even if my father didn't tell you. I knew his secret from the start. The deaths of my brother and sister weren't normal." While looking at me with pity, I was convinced that there was a conspiracy in the series of events that happened, seeing my father gambling and an alcoholic going after women, and it was as I had expected. As I closely watched the surroundings, I noticed the servants were adding something to my food. It was an element to detoxify my body, and if so, I arrived at the conclusion that my father acted out with the intention to save my life. "Why didn't you tell me if you knew the truth?" "Because talking about it wouldn't change anything. Count London. An evil group of people is doing their best to kill the heirs of the royal family and threaten my father with my life. What should I do? Because I have been poisoned by someone and my life is at stake, is it right to ask for favors? How would that look? Even telling the truth wouldn't solve the problem." The moment the magicians declared he couldn't be cured, Charlotte Redford and his coming death would be known to all. Despite knowing that, the king couldn't let go of the last child he had. Having lost 2 of his kids, he couldn't see the last one go. Count London said, "Prince, you spoke of the rebellion. Despite knowing the truth, you still wanted to do it? Is there anything else that could be done? My father cannot give up his life as such, and I couldn't harm him directly. Then the only way for Redford to survive is for us to die. So I asked you to start a rebellion. Merely stepping down from the throne wouldn't solve the problem. The power must be fully transferred into the hands of the right person, and it would be a problem if a person with royal blood survived. So I hoped you would raise your sword. Count London is the right person to inherit the throne. Knowing the years you have devoted yourself to Redford, I thought the Count would be ready to make the right decision. To bring the king down from the throne, what if Charlotte Redford died from the poison? Count London would naturally inherit the vacant seat from Charlotte Redford, and that was the prince's plan. Knowing the truth, he risked his life to protect the nation. But my father moved first. When he came and told me the truth, he tried to be as calm as possible when he sentenced himself to death. I looked at my father and showed him a face that I didn't know what he was saying. That way, father would have a bit of an unburdened mind. Charlotte Redford, people judged him unworthy of the throne. Even though he wasn't born with the ability to rule others, he accepted his destiny as a member of the royal family. Maybe he would have been fit to be king. Had he accumulated experience and years of guidance, Charlotte Redford would have been a nice king. However, the reality wasn't like that. The turbulent times weren't nice for the young man, so the royal heir had to accept his own death. Count London bowed his head, unable to look at the prince. Just like how he shouldered the burden of the kingdom, the thought of the burden this child had been keeping made him emotional. Charlotte Redford said, "Lastly, there is something I want to ask Count London. Please do not make our deaths in vain. Please bring Redford back to life and take revenge on the evil ones who threw our nation into chaos. If you can promise that much, I will accept my death with a smile." At that, Count London nodded his head. No words of comfort were said. Since he couldn't speak right now, he just nodded, holding back his emotions. 10 days later, Charlotte Redford closed his eyes. The deadly poison began to flare up, and he became a weak man and ended his life with a frail appearance, unlike the dignified life he had. In his last moments, he showed a bit of will to live. If it weren't for his status as the prince, he would have struggled to live but decided to stay silent about his wishes for the sake of the future. Well, he knew that if he left with regrets or spoke the wrong words, he would make the path tough for Count London. It was such a gloomy day. On a day with dark clouds and heavy rain, a public funeral was held for the prince. Weak. A fire broke out. The two corpses laid in the center of a tall tree, and the flames of magic burned everything red. A lot of people watched that scene, and they lined up behind Count London. They had forgotten about their mistakes and showed courtesy to the royal family. The king and the prince, the cause of their deaths was disclosed publicly. The king took his life to not succumb to the threats any longer, and the prince died from the clutches of an evil group. Redford resented the king. His crime that plunged their nation into the abyss deserved punishment, but the story of the evil group spread a lot of angry flames. And that was what Count London was aiming for. In order to raise the kingdom from its shaky foundation, it was necessary for everyone to know the existence of their enemies. The ruin of their nation, bringing the royal family to their deaths, and the existence that used Jacqueline. As word spread that it was the Kronos Empire, the people's anger was great. "Your Majesty, Prince Charlo." Count London looked at the flames with a complicated expression. At last, Redford had their own story. The king had his own story, and the prince had his own story, along with Jacqueline. If only people were a little more honest with each other. There might have been a chance to solve the problems, but the wrong choices continued to be made. But Count London lived by his own story. Even though he was accused of being the traitor, he thought he had shouldered the burden of the kingdom, and as Jacqueline attacked him based on what he saw, he also attacked the king on what he saw. It wasn't like the king's actions were lies, but the fact that he knew the truth only after death was what remained in his heart. Redford will not fall like this. We will create a nation that constantly doubts the truth in front of us, listens to what people say, and will not collapse to the plans of the evil ones like Kronos, and more importantly, I will get my revenge. He gritted his teeth as he looked at the burning flame. Count London turned around and spoke to the royal knight, who was now following him. "The coronation ceremony will be held in a few days. Pick a place and tell the people." "I understand. Leave the dead behind." From now on, it was his turn to live for the living. Usually, a government secured by a rebellion isn't supported by the people. But it was different for Count London. With the royal family's death, people naturally appointed Count London as their new king. It was not a throne won by a rebellion. It was obvious that Count London led his troops to the palace to visit the king, but since the people of the palace spoke about it outside, no one even bothered to protest. Rather, they liked it. Who was Count London? The person who devoted himself to the Redford kingdom. And with the years of calling him a traitor, the guilt that was in their hearts turned into cheers. "Your Majesty! Congratulations!" "Whoa! Redford! Redford!" People flocked to the palace. At the place where the new king was being enthroned, they cheered. Count London, no, the king of Redford, looked at the people. "The people I will rule from now on." 10 days ago, with everything wrapped up, Roman Dmitri said these last words before leaving. "Count London, Now that the truth has been revealed, people will cheer for you as if they never criticized you. They will show blind loyalty to you, but do not attach great importance to these changes. Those who called you a traitor, those who raised their voices saying they respected you, and those who took part in the riot in front of your home, all of them are people of Redford. What they will look like depends on how you rule. In fact, it cannot be ruled out that the fact that they didn't see the truth of their noble leader is the fault of the one who created such an environment. Keep that in mind. Roman Dimitri's words were engraved into his chest. The king of Redford raised his hand, forgetting the past. And cheers erupted. Redford would not repeat the mistakes of the past. When Redford faced a period of upheaval, Roman returned to Dimitri. If Redford regains stability, then Dimitri will have a strong ally. Count London said he would build a nation. And if they went to war with the Kronos Empire in the future, they would do their best to get their revenge. It wasn't a bad result. The kingdom's alliance, which had been on the verge of collapsing, regained stability, and Redford would treat Dimitri as its lifelong benefactor. Roman organized his thoughts about Redford. From now on, it was up to them. The most important issue in the future was to ensure Dimitri wouldn't be shaken. For a few days, he wouldn't travel. Roman Dimitri called Chris. Chris. We will leave for the Valhalla Empire in the future. At that time, it will be impossible to bring all of Dimitri's forces. In Valhalla and also in Dimitri, we never know what will happen, so the soldiers need to train for a battle without me in case of an emergency. For the time being, cancel any other schedules and proceed with the special training. Anything else? No. Just tell them to get a good rest and prepare for training. This time, it will be tough. I understand. Chris nodded. So far, Dimitri's training has always been intense. But when Roman said it would be tough, he couldn't help but mumble. It will be huge. Not for Cairo, but the man called the next Lord of Dimitri was talking about training, which made them sweat. Time passed, and before they knew it, the deadline Valhalla spoke of arrived.